Hello everybody, and welcome back to Path of Exile 2. After a few weeks, which is probably a long time for some of you out there who play this game, I have finally finished the entire campaign story that's available right now here in Early Access for Path of Exile 2. And I wanted to take a moment before I move on to maps, which we will be doing on camera starting next week. Or maybe tomorrow, depending on when this video is actually going to be published. I'm not exactly sure when, but it doesn't matter. But before I start moving on into maps, I just wanted to take a moment to talk about my experience through the campaign. And, you know, as you can see from the little, like, notepad document here, I have a lot to say about the game. Most of it is things that I would like to see changed and adjusted because I think that they have a significantly negative impact on the game. I actually rage quit the game for about a week because a couple of the bosses were I just didn't want to deal with them anymore. Just didn't want to deal with them anymore. But we'll talk about that later. This video will be more of a comprehensive viewpoint from somebody who is very, very experienced in games, but isn't into the whole hardcore aspect of wanting to be I want to impress people with my gaming. I just want to have fun playing a game. And this game could be that if some things were maybe adjusted a little bit. I have a love-hate relationship with this game, and if you've watched my videos for any length of time, you know I get pretty angry. This is one of the few games in the world that just really makes me angry, because I want it to be a certain way, and it's just not. And it would be so much better if it was that way, and it's just not. So my feedback in this video is intended to address some things that just need to be fixed. These are objective, you can't really argue with them kind of things, such as, well, the first thing we'll talk about. And then other things are things I think are opinions that I think a lot of people would agree with. And then some of them are probably going to be, I just want it to be a certain way because I don't like having to deal with the BS, and a lot of people are probably going to disagree. I haven't necessarily organized it that way, but I'm just acknowledging up front that these are my opinions, and some of you are going to disagree with them, and it is what it is. So I think about 90-ish% of this game is really good. I'm going to start off by talking about what I like about the game. The 90% of this game is probably 90% is really good. The graphics are really good. The combat system, the moving around, the way it feels to kind of interact with the game itself for most of your time in the game, especially when you're not boss fighting, when you're just kind of running around and doing stuff. On every character I've played, for the most part, just the feel of interacting with the game is really nice. It's smooth, it's intuitive, doesn't require a lot of practice and effort to get into it. Now, I will say I've tried to play couch co-op with my wife with the Xbox controllers, and I have to say that as a keyboard and mouse gamer, it's just really hard for me to do that. That's not necessarily a problem with the system itself. It's just, I don't know, I have a really hard time with that. But other than that, other than the controller side of things, the mouse and keyboard interface is extremely intuitive for somebody who's been gaming for a very long time. The story for this game, oh my god, the story is really good. It's engaging. I actually follow the story. I actually want to follow the story in this game. Whereas in PoE 1, the story was there if you went and looked for it. I like that they're actually delivering it to you in this game via voice narrations and, you know, just various things you find along the way. You just find lots of cool information. So the story delivery in this game is way, way better. While I enjoy the fact that the map system in here is very pretty to look at, as you can see, it takes way too long to load. So I hope this is something that they're going to optimize and make it a little bit less annoying. But I mean, this is way prettier than the PoE 1 map system was, and it's also much more informative and also gives you a lot more. It gives you a better feel of where things are in relation to where you are right now. So I know, oh, this map is like really far away. I have to go through several things to get to it. Whereas in PoE 1, the map was really small. It didn't really have a lot of information in it. So I really enjoy the interface for this game is really, really good. But outside of that, I think, but realistically, like the things I just mentioned, that is the 90% of the game, you know? Does it look really good? Does it perform really well? Does it feel intuitive when you play it? Do you enjoy the story as you're going through the role-playing game that you're playing? Like, that's most of the game. But it's the other 10% of things that really starts to grate on your nerves after a while, and we're going to go through them. So we're going to go ahead and get started with that now. I want to talk about some general notes first, and then we'll start moving into some combat-related things. We're going to talk about the Ascendancy process, and then I have an itemized list of issues that I have with certain bosses that make them pretty unreasonable. So I will have timestamps and all of this to get you through all of that. This is going to be a long-ish video, so, you know, I appreciate those of you who choose to slog through it. Now, starting out with the general notes, I've made a separate video on this already, but this is absolutely the very first thing that needs to be addressed. I realize that there are different developers who work on, you know, game design and things like that, and people who work on infrastructure. Whoever's working on infrastructure, you need to drop everything else that you're doing, and you need to fix whatever this problem is, because it's super annoying to have the game crashing, and not only just the game is crashing, but it locks up my computer in a loading screen in a way that forces me to completely reset my system. So based on the comments that I've received from various sources in a couple of places that I've posted this, it seems like it might be a Windows 11 specific issue. I'm not sure. I can't make any solid statements on that. But my last computer was an Intel CPU with an RTX 2060 Super graphics card, and this computer I'm on now is an AMD 7600 with an RTX 4070 Super. So the CPU seems to be the issue, and it happens on both Intel and AMD, which says to me that this is not a problem with my hardware, it's a problem with your program, the developer's programming, and they need to figure out what's going on. And most of the people who report issues have told me that they run Windows 11. A lot of people who have Windows 10 are saying they don't have the issue. So maybe it's just some kind of weird thing that happens with Windows 11. I don't know. But it absolutely needs to be identified as quickly as possible, because this is by far the 100% most annoying issue with the early access for this game so far. It wouldn't bother me so much if the game itself just crashed and I just had to restart it. The part that bothers me is I have to restart my entire machine, and that's irritating. That's really, really irritating, and it's like rage-inducing when it happens. So this really needs to be fixed as soon as possible. Map sizes in general, I feel, are just... In Act 1, they're not too bad, but when you start getting into late Act 2 and most of Act 3, the size of the maps, especially in the end of Act 3, the size of the maps it's too much. It's too much ground that you have to cover, especially when you're not getting really decent movement speed increases, like upwards of 30% movement speed increases. Like, those are really hard to get to. So I think maybe adjusting the map size would be great. If they can either make them smaller or just make them smaller, because a lot of times the things that you need, the various different things that you need to find in the map are just way too spread out, and it's super frustrating when you have to when you basically have to explore the entire, almost every square inch of the map to find the various different things that you need, because they're all flung across the different corners of the map. So if you're going to do it that way, that's fine. Just make the maps smaller so we don't have to run so much. It's annoying to have to do that. Support gems just don't drop they just don't drop often enough, specifically in Acts 1 and 2. You can see in my stash that I have almost twice as many level 2 support gems as I do level 1 support gems, and that's kind of ridiculous. This should be inverted. I should have more of these and less of these, and that's kind of frustrating that this is how that ended up happening. You can see I have all these extra skill gems here. Maybe convert some of whatever equation you're using to calculate the drops, maybe tamp this down a little bit and move it over to the support gem side, because it would be much nicer, because you're going to need more support gems to socket into your skill gems than the other way around. I don't need more skill gems. I'm not trying to take every skill in the game that's available to my character. I'm trying to take a few specific ones that go to the play style that I'm trying to go for, and the rest of them I just end up not doing anything with it. Like, I'm going to go through and probably sell most of these at some point. Rarity is just something that I'm sorry. I disagree with anyone who says that rarity is something that I should have to worry about. Gear should just be a given. Gear should just be something that drops on the ground, and it should drop on the ground with enough frequency and with enough quality that I'm able to regularly upgrade my gear. Maybe not like God tier upgrades all the time like it is in Diablo, but I should be finding gear that helps my character. I should be finding gear that is at least incrementally better as I'm going into new areas. Rarity should not be something I have to waste a slot on my gear in order to find better gear. Gear should just be, I should just be finding gear. I shouldn't have to prompt the system to help me find it. That's not something I should have to worry about. So, in my opinion, and a lot of people are going to disagree because, you know, I guess this whole concept was introduced back in Diablo 2. I just think it's a stupid idea. I think it needs to be removed. There's no call for this. Gear should just appear. I shouldn't have to make it appear. That's kind of dumb to me, but that's my opinion. Orbs, for the most part, just don't drop enough. Especially the ones that you don't get from refining. Like, I got 1,000,000 of these orbs of 231, but I have a lot of these transmutation orbs because I'm constantly disenchanting my gear. But augmentation and the regal orbs and my exalted orbs, you only get those from drops or the regal regal shards. Like, so this one and this one, you know, you only get these from the shards that you get. And every once in a while you'll find an orb of transmutation, and every once in a while you'll find a regal orb, and then every once in a while you get an exalted orb. Like, especially these two here, as you start getting into, you know, Acts 2 and 3, you really need to have mostly yellow gear to have a decent shot at fighting some of these bosses that are pretty difficult. So I feel like as far as the balance goes, I know they try to be stingy at first, but they really need to ramp this up a little bit so that, especially if you're trying to play multiple characters, because if you're reading this along with me talking, I don't want to have to level a character up into maps to go farming to get enough of these orbs to support my alts. I don't want to have to do it that way. I want each individual alt to be able to support himself as he's leveling up through the campaign. And because you have to share these between all of your characters, and they don't spawn enough to make it so that you can do that, you get kind of effed over when you're trying to, you know, upgrade your gear, because this stuff just doesn't drop nearly enough. So I think they just need to significantly increase the drop rate for these. You should have an abundance of these. This shouldn't be something that's like a hot commodity. Like, these should be something that allows you to, hey, let me try to upgrade my gear, and I have enough of these that I don't feel bad about experimenting with, hey, let me try experimenting and upgrading this to a rare and see if I get lucky with a thing. I shouldn't have to go, ugh, oh. You know what I mean? Like, it shouldn't be this heart-wrenching thing. You know, that should only happen when you're trying to add a bunch of extra modifiers to max out your stuff to get 6 items. That's the process that should be. But at the very least, regal orbs should just be kind of falling from the skies. Not quite as much as these two, but at least to a point where you're able to feel comfortable upgrading an item to a rare just out of experimentation and hoping that maybe, you know, I get something cool. It shouldn't be a fear thing. It should just be a, hey, let's see if it happens. I don't think the balance is there. All right. Crafting bench. OMFG. Oh my FNG. We need some kind of a basic crafting bench. I know they don't want crafting to be as complicated as it is in Path of Exile 1, and that's fine. I agree with that decision. However, there are certain things that are basic necessities that you absolutely must have to have any kind of serious survivability in this game. It was the same in Path of Exile 1, and it's the same here. We need elemental resistances, and we need movement speed. There are 2 basic fundamental resources that we must absolutely have access to have any kind of serious chance of not dying every 2 seconds in a boss fight. As you can see, I am getting into maps, and I still haven't capped out my resistances yet. Whereas in PoE 1, because you have the crafting bench, you could kind of just go around and, you know, find gear and then kind of craft it into and you could like replace things. You could strip off the thing. You could strip out enchantments and start over with the gear that you had. And you can say, all right, my base thing that I want is I want to spread my resistances around so I can get as close to 75% as I can. And then maybe if I'm lucky, I'll get some additional resistances as I'm doing the random orb crafting, right? we need a basic crafting bench, and movement speed absolutely needs to be on the list of things that that bench provides, because this game is leaning heavily towards the action-oriented side of things, which means that movement speed is king. You absolutely must be able to move around quickly to avoid a lot of the things, because a lot of the time the dodge roll just does not dodge you far enough to get you away from whatever it is that you're trying to avoid. Right? So you need to be able to move quickly and dodge roll, to be able to get away from whatever it is that you're trying to get away from. And it's just, I don't know about you guys, but I've had a really angry RNGesus who is just really stingy with giving me anything. I have gone through this entire campaign, and I was lucky enough to find a 15% movement speed boost. But every time I go back after every level, I don't even find any kind of movement speed at all on any of the boots, on any of the vendors that I go back and look at. The RNG has been horrible for me when it comes to movement speed. So we really need for these basic things that are kind of baked into the expectations of the game to be put into a basic crafting bench that allows you to guarantee that you can at least get some level of those things incorporated into your character without having to wait for, you know, almost entire acts before you find the gear that you need. That's not something you should have to deal with. So a crafting bench, a basic crafting bench, it doesn't need to have all the recipes from the first game. We don't need to go that crazy, but just something that has basic things that, you know, are fundamental parts of the character design. Those need to be something that we have consistent access to, not, oh, did you randomly happen to get it? That it shouldn't be that way for that. Same thing with the runes. Runes need to either be way more common, especially these elemental runes, so that you can kind of sprinkle in resistances where you need to, or they need to be removable from the gear, and that wouldn't be that hard to do. You know, you run over to the salvage bench, right? Over to the salvage bench, which is over here in the area that I'm in now, and then when you salvage a piece of gear, it automatically yanks the two things out and you get them back, right? Like, especially when you're having to share all of your equipment amongst multiple characters, you know, it shouldn't be a requirement that I have to start going through maps to farm gear for my lower level characters. I like my first character, like I don't like that philosophy, and it really needs to change. Like I shouldn't have to go farm gear to be able to play a different class. That's ridiculous. I think it's stupid. So we either need a lot more rooms. Oh, that's what happened there. We either need a lot more rooms, or we need to be able to yank them out of the gear, just so we have more access to them. As far as item descriptions and stuff goes, we really need to have, they need to do another pass over the descriptions. And the reason I say that is that I have this grants immunity to poison thing. And the problem with that is that I have this in my slot, and I'm running around and I'm doing combat, and all of a sudden my health bar turns green. Well, if I'm immune to poison, why is my health bar turning green? So a lot of the item descriptions either need to be updated, or they need to actually read them and make sure that it says what they expect it to say, because this does not grant me immunity to poison. I'm not immune to poison. That's not what this does, at least not according to my health bar. So that's something that needs to be adjusted. And then obviously a map stash tab, which I think I have in the original game, which means I think it'll port over when they add it to this one. They just really need to add it sooner rather than later, because I haven't even started maps yet, and I already have one whole column filled up here. This is just from Act 3 Cruel, Acts 2 and 3 Cruel, right? Already, I'm already have a whole column filled up, and this is going to continue to get worse and worse and worse as I start doing maps. So that's going to get annoying. All right, so that's it for the general section. I have a few combat-related things to talk about. So the first one isn't really a complaint. It's more of kind of like a note. So as a lot of people have said, the difference in difficulty between the first 3 acts of the campaign and then going back through them in the Cruel setting, the Cruel version is absolutely a cakewalk, especially for this Shatter Monk that I have right in here. Which I took from Ascendencies. He is the originator of this build. Go check it out. Go check his channel out. If you play Path of Exile, you probably know who he is already, but that's where I got the build from. Yeah, Cruel is a cakewalk compared to the first 3 acts of the campaign, but I don't think that it's a problem, because number one, you've kind of got your build online by the time you get to the end of Act 3. You've got it kind of locked in, set. It is what it is. Your character is what it's going to be. So you're kind of really starting to ramp up through your power right when you get to that point. So it kind of makes sense that you're going to be stronger going back through the campaign than you were the first time. And then the other side of it is just that, you know, it's a placeholder. It wasn't really intended to be something that they put a lot of time and effort to make it challenging for you. They just needed to make sure you went through 6 acts worth of content so that you earned all of the levels that you needed to get to start doing maps. So I have to imagine that acts 4 through 6 are going to be significantly more challenging than acts 1 through 3 cruel version are, because they probably just added a flat bonus to, they probably just added a flat copy paste bonus to things to just make them higher level, so that when you went back through it again, you didn't just insta kill everything. So you shouldn't expect the difficulty to go higher on something that is that was by definition supposed to be something that is temporary. So I just wanted to mention that. A lot of people are making a point of the fact that cruel was basically a cakewalk compared to the first one, and they're worried that that's going to be the same thing going forward. I imagine for acts 4 through 6, those are going to be designed for characters that have gone through the progression to that point, and they're going to be a lot more, it's going to be a lot more difficult and more challenging and all of that stuff, because, you know, that's the expectation that they're designing, versus the copy-paste system that they did just to kind of get you through this first part of it. As far as stuns and interrupts, I have a serious issue with the idea that trash mobs who have the ability to kind of just like volley a bunch of different projectiles at you also have the ability to stun you at the same time. Like, they just kind of lock you in place for half a second. The problem with that is that when you have a volley of things that are coming at you, when one projectile hits you and just kind of locks you into place, that forces you to sit there and take a bunch of hits from a bunch of different things. And if you're on a squishy glass cannon monk kind of character, that can quickly take you down. So I don't think the advantage of range should also come with the advantage of locking somebody in place. You need to pick one. If they're gonna shoot something at you, they shouldn't also be able to be like, "Ugh, you're locked in place." I don't think that's, especially when there's a lot of it happening, when there's a big pack of monsters that are just kind of bombarding you with a bunch of crap. You need to be able to dodge, roll out of the way of that stuff so that you don't kind of get insta-killed, because that's one of those things where it almost feels like a one-shot sometimes. They shouldn't be able to lock you in place. There are certain abilities out there where you can kind of stack one type of ability on top of another. So, for example, this particular build, I'm not able to do anything here. Let's see if we can go look at, that's fine. If you've seen, this ability has Ice Strike, which kind of like yanks itself over to an enemy and hits them. But it also has this Charged Staff ability, which has like a wave that comes out when you strike. And that's great. You know, you have a melee ability that also has a ranged, a kind of a ranged component on top of it. That's great. The issue is that there doesn't seem to be any kind of a hierarchy when it comes to what ability is controlling your character. So the Charged Staff is mostly meant for you to stand, for you to stand in place or maybe walk slowly and just send out waves and waves of energy. The problem is that a lot of times that interrupts the ability of your Ice Strike to kind of just leap forward and hit somebody. And one of the primary benefits of the Ice Strike ability is the fact that it's almost sort of like Flicker Strike, where you're able to kind of just zoop, 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 zoop all around the screen like that. So there needs to be some kind of hard-coded hierarchy for abilities, where if you're using a melee ability that has a ranged component to it, the melee part of that needs to take priority when it comes to how your character is moving and reacting, and the range just happens as a side effect. I don't want my character to attack in place just because I have a ranged component added onto my attack. I want my character to zip around the things, because that's the way the build. Because this is a glass cannon character and he can't really just take hits, I need him to be able to just kind of go bam, 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 bam. He can't just be stuck in one spot, like swashing the air with his Charged Staff or whatever. Like that can't be something that continues to happen. So we definitely need to have some kind of hierarchy of abilities. The melee part of an ability set needs to take priority, and the range is just added bonus on top of that. It needs to be that way. As far as dash pathing, with talking about the Ice Strike here, this game has the same problem that PoE 1 did. If there is anything in your way, you will just sit in place and just attack in place until you move. Sorry. I keep forgetting that I clicked on that. Until you move out of the way and create a clear path for yourself. Now, while that may seem reasonable on the surface, when there's a bunch of crap going on and you can't really see the ground, or you don't realize that, you know, the little vase on the ground is going to stop you from being able to dash forward, I think that's kind of unreasonable. And it needs to be set up in a way so that, yeah, you can't dash through a wall, but if you're kind of at a corner, you should be able to be like, yeah, we'll just path you around the corner and get you to the guy. There needs to be a reasonable amount of leniency when it comes to the pathing for a dash mechanic, so that you're not having to constantly fight with the terrain to get things done. Obviously, you shouldn't be able to dash from one side of this wall to the other. Like, there needs to be a little bit of a thing. But, you know, if I'm right here, I shouldn't be stopped from dashing through here. Like, there can be a little bit of a curve to get me over there versus, you know, trying to go straight through the wall. I understand there needs to be some limitations to that, but I think the limitations are too strict. We need to pull back on that a little bit. Okay, as far as the ascendancy process. Okay. I'm sorry, but the ascendancy system as it exists right now it's too much. It's way too much effort. It's way too much time expected to be invested for the return that you get on that investment. And so what I'm saying when I say that is that you go to the Trial of the Sekimas. I can't stand that effing thing. It annoys the hell out of me. And most of that is due to the fact that they chose to do this BS honor system that they decided to do. It's like, survival's not enough, huh? I can't just like get through the trial and that's enough and I can get my ascendancy points. No, if I get unlucky with, you know, my ability to restore my honor, or if I take too much damage in one part and I'm able to heal myself, but no, my honor's down, so now I just don't really have much of a chance of finishing this trial because I have 200 honor left and I still have to fight the boss. Like, and I'm a melee character. It's like, I just think the concept, I'm sure the concept sounded cool when they were talking about it, but the amount of time that you end up wasting when you get really unlucky with your RNG, like RNG is fine when it's going to be something related to crafting gear. RNG should not be something that inhibits you from completing something that takes 30 plus minutes to get done. It's super frustrating to spend 30 minutes getting most of the way through the trial, and then you don't have enough honor to finish off the boss. You get killed. You don't get killed by the boss, but the last of your honor gets run off by the boss, and then that entire process that you did is just completely wasted. And then apparently, I tried to do a second floor of the Trial of the Sekimas, only to find that not only is there a second harder floor that you have to do, but you also have to go through the first floor again before you can even get to the second floor. So all of the crap that piles up on you as you go through the first floor, you take with you into the second floor. I will never ever do another Trial of the Sekimas ever again outside of the first floor. I'll do the first floor. That's as far as I'm willing to go. But I will never do a second floor, third floor, whatever other floors that they have. I will never do any of those again because the first floor is already way too long. It was already annoying me just being the first floor the way that it is. And then the second floor is just as long, and you have to go through the first floor again. I'm sorry, but the ascendancy points are never going to be worth it. The ascendancy points are never going to have enough worth attached to them to be willing to go through that. That is not reasonable, and I'm not going to do it. I will never, until they at least until they remove the honor system and make it to where you can do each floor individually. Both of those things need to happen before I even think about messing around with Trial of the Sekimas more than just the first floor. Now, fortunately, the Chaos Trial isn't quite as hard as I thought it was going to be. It says that you have to go through 10, but then I went through 5 and I was able to get my ascendancy points. And with this OP character, I was really over leveled when I did it. So it was actually really easy to get done. But fortunately, the Chaos Trial itself isn't quite as hard as the initial information makes it seem like it's going to be. So I was able to get that done. I was able to get my second 2 ascendancy points. So as you can see here, I have the Blizzard and Unbound Avatar skill, right? So I've gotten this character about as good as it's going to get, because I'm not going to go through the second parts of either of these. It's too annoying. It's too time-consuming. It's too irritating. It's too frustrating and rage-inducing when you go through all of this effort trying to get to the end of something, only to have it ripped away from you at the last 2 seconds of what you were trying to do, and all that time you invested trying to do it, completely wasted. I don't like anything that wastes my time. If I'm going to invest my time into something, I need to get something back out of it. Something minimum back out of it. Don't waste my time. Time is, I don't care how much money you make, whether you're a zillionaire or you make $5 an hour. Your time is the most valuable resource that any of us has. My time is way more valuable than your time to me. I don't care how much money you make. I don't care how important you think you are. Time is time. We don't get any more of it. We don't get any less of it. It is what it is. Don't waste my time. So there's just, this needs a complete rework. It needs a complete rethink. This is not something that's reasonable to expect people to go through. And I'm sorry, but I'm sure it sounded cool when they were putting the design together. But at some point when they were testing this, they really should have thought, are people really going to want to sit through this crap? Are people really, I won't say crap. I know they're not going to think it's crap. But are people really going to want to sit through all of this? Are they really going to want to do that? I have to say, I have to imagine a lot of people are not going to. All right, so now we're down to the last part of this, where I have individual issues with some of the bosses that have made them particularly frustrating. And I don't like to just complain about things. I mean, obviously during my videos when I'm dealing with that stuff, I complain and I rage and I lose my mind and all that shit. But things don't get better unless you address the actual issues that are making you mad. So we're going to talk about these individual bosses real quick and just try to go over and, make sure that maybe some of these things can get changed to make them a little bit less ridiculous. So obviously Act 1 Lachlan is my first major issue. His Rage Burns attack, that little dual slam attack that he does, that's a one-shot for pretty much every build out there if you're not a warrior with a high health pool. And the problem is that the AoE for it is so big that sometimes you can't, sometimes even trying to roll away from it when you see it coming, you're still not able to quite clear it enough to not get hit by it, and then you get one shot. So the problem with this is, it's not that the attack itself is an unreasonable attack, it's that the telegraph for it is not consistent. It's sometimes he just launches right into it, like he'll be in the middle of his attack while he's saying it. So this really needs to be adjusted to make sure that the attack itself doesn't actually land until he says the word burns. My rage burns, right? And it needs to always be the slow version of that phrase, right? Because there's one where he goes, my rage burns. And then there's other ones where he goes, my rage burns. And it's like, no. You can't do that. With something that's a one shot like that, you can't have it be like a half a second thing where there's no time to react and dodge, roll away, and also get out of this freaking massive AoE attack that it is. So if they wanted to have different timings on it, then they need to significantly reduce the AoE effect on it, or they just need to lock it in at that slower rate and make it really obvious when it's going to happen, so that you have, because it takes time to recognize the attack is coming, to physically, to mentally recognize it, to physically hit the dodge button, and then for your character to react and move. There needs to be enough time in there for you to be able to do that. And with the way it's set up now, there's just been way too many times where I've been one shot by that character, and I fought him a bunch of times, and I know the fight. So it needs to be tweaked down quite a bit. As far as Wrathbreaker in Act 2, we need to have a little bit more coordination between the boss himself and some of the environmental effects that are happening. Because he has this like 2 or 3 part slicing attack that for most builds is going to be a one shot if you get hit by it. And then there's also this like path of arrows that kind of falls down while you're fighting him. And that can also be a one shot for some builds if you get stuck in that too. But if you get stuck in that and he also does his like massive slicing attack at the same time, well, that's basically a one shot that you can't avoid, because if you happen to get if you're like focused on something else and oh crap, the rain of arrows, I tried to dodge, but oh nope, I got caught in it, it pins me in place, and you get slammed by the thing. Like, that needs to be adjusted. It needs to be either he's doing his bang attack, or the environment is doing its bang attack, and there needs to be a gap between them so that there's no way that one can overlap to the other. That needs to be adjusted really bad. For the Watchful Twins, that's those 2 vulture dudes in, I forget what area they're in, but it's in that little poison area where the vultures come down and they fight you. The fight itself isn't necessarily that hard, except for the fact that they're able to just constantly jump after you, and they're both jumping after you. And if you're playing a build that really needs to have a little bit of distance and separation, that can become really hard to deal with, because you know, they have almost unlimited mobility to just run around the map. And while, yeah, you have unlimited dodge rolling, you can't do anything while you're dodge rolling. So you're just constantly dodge rolling out of the way, and then you don't have time to do anything before they're on top of you again. So I think there just needs to be some kind of a cooldown for their ability to leap at you. That doesn't need to be something that they're able to just spam over and over and over again, and that would make that fight a lot more reasonable. The only way that this fight is easy is if you have something that can DPS them down real fast. And so this monk is the only reason why that fight was reasonable. But every other time I fought them, I've dreaded that fight because they're constantly just leaping at you, and it's really irritating. As far as Torgal, that big skeleton thing that pops up out of the thing before you go fight the final boss, we get 0 size when we're dodge rolling through mobs, trash mobs and things like that, but for whatever reason, we don't get that same ability to roll under his arms, right? So his arms are all over the place around him, and, you know, there's a lot of times when you get midway through the fight, there's a bunch of fire and all kinds of area of effect stuff happening on the ground. We really need the ability to dodge roll under his arms, or you know, make his arms transparent, and just the claws or something that are, you know, physical objects that we can't go through, because you need to be able to dodge under his arms and stay out of all that crap that's on the edge of the thing, because the intent is that they want you to stay close to the boss. That's fine, but you need to be able to maneuver around the boss without getting caught up in his arms. I don't think that's reasonable. Now, obviously, there's certain things where he's like trying to scoop you in. There could be something where they leave his arms transparent until he does that ability, then they become solid because now he's actively trying to scoop you. But if he's just standing there doing stuff around, you need to be able to move around his body. And so that's just something that needs to be adjusted. As far as Balbala, she's just way too fast. That fight is way, way, way too fast. If you have a build that has a bunch of AoE happening and you can just kind of keep spamming that fight's relatively easy. But if you're doing anything that requires you to follow her around and do some things, and her attacks just come way too fast, there's no telegraphing at all, it's just constant yang, 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 yang. That fight is really irritating for certain builds, and it really needs to be adjusted. Like her entire speed for everything on that just really needs to be tamped down quite a bit. Zalmarath, I didn't write down which one this is. Zalmarath is the big Colossus guy in the caves. This fight isn't really that hard. The issue I have with this fight is that targeting him can be very difficult because he's outside of the platform that you're fighting on. If you're just shooting things at him, it's not too bad. But if you need to place something down, like a totem, or like especially the monk's bell, which is, you know, for this guy is a massive part of his DPS boost. A lot of times the bell or the totem or whatever will just fall off the edge, and then you don't get access to it. So they need to put some kind of a barrier, maybe some kind of a programming barrier around the platform, so that you can, you know, aim it in his general direction, and then it just sits at the edge, and then I can just bang on it, or the totem just kind of goes towards him or whatever. But there's some kind of lack of programming barrier that prevents, you know, the rest of the screen from interacting with the things that you're doing, and it makes getting damage on him very hard. Oh man, I knew I was going to forget something. One of the things I wanted to talk about is just the fact that the Tempest Bell, that needs to be an always on top thing. It's super frustrating when you drop the bell down in a group of things or next to a boss, and then you're trying to hit the bell, which is going to do all the damage, but then it keeps targeting the boss, and then it's not hitting the bell, and it's super frustrating. So the bell needs to be something that has like an always on top feature on it, so that I can just hover over it, and it's always going to hit the bell until the bell goes away, and then I can do the thing. So I really wish I remembered that back in the combat section, because now people are going to miss it. That's fine. The bell needs to have an always on top feature. Certain things that require you to interact with it to get maximum effect should have an always on top feature to them, so that I can decide, hey, I really want to get this now. Let me attack it. Okay. The final version of Jamanra it's not too hard once you learn the fight, and it's an act boss, so it falls into that category of bosses where I say that, yeah, it's reasonable for this boss to require you to actually do it, maybe take 5 or 10 attempts to get it done, because, you know, it's a capstone for the act, and that makes sense to me. I don't agree that every boss you fight should require you to learn them. You should be able to just kind of muscle your way through most of them. But Jamanra, the final version of him, it's reasonable for it to be difficult, and once you learn the fight, it's not that bad. However, the sandstorm thing that happens while you're still on the Dreadnought that can be visually difficult to deal with. Mostly because especially if you're like the fire minion witch or whatever, and you have a bunch of fire on the ground, it can be very difficult to see where the Sekima is standing and shielding you from the thing. And more than once I've died because I just couldn't find the damn bubble when it was happening. It's like, where the fuck is the bubble? So they need to make it more obvious so that it's easier to see. It's more visually clear so that you don't die just because you can't find it, not because you weren't paying attention. Like, I'm actively trying to find it. Where the hell is it? By the time I finally pick it out from all the details and stuff that's going on, I've already died. It's really annoying. Silver Fist in Act 3 really needs to be adjusted in a way that makes it so that you can kind of know he's there before he kills you. More than once I've wandered into that ruin not realizing that that's the ruin that he's in, and then he just smashes me one time and I'm dead. So there needs to be some kind of a fix that happens so that squishy characters don't get one-shotted by that first, because he starts off with that massive crazy ability. That's the first thing he does. So maybe make it so that's not the first thing he does, so that you have a second or two to realize, oh crap, I'm under attack by this massive gorilla. He shouldn't start off with his one-shot ability. That's really irritating. The Bog Witch is just a really annoying fight. I'm sorry. She flies around for way too long, and the little bone wall that she has, it only has certain points that you can run through, so if you can't get to those quickly enough and realize where they are and roll through it, that fire comes in and one-shots most of the builds that I've tried to fight her with. So, I don't know. We need to significantly reduce the amount of time that she's flying around, because it's irritating to have to just sit there and watch her go like 5 seconds maybe of flying around and then get back to the fight, because it's boring to just sit there and watch her fling herself around on that stupid broom. And then create more gaps in the wall so that we can roll out of that quicker, because that's almost a one-shot attack for most things. Okay, the most 100% the most irritating fight for me is Blackjaw in the ruins, in the Machinarium or whatever. And it's solely because he has this 3-part attack where he goes bam, bam, bam. And the problem with the attack isn't that it's a 3-part attack, and it isn't that they're one-shot attacks. It's that they happen so quickly that even if you dodge roll the first one, the second one comes so fast that you can't physically dodge roll again fast enough to avoid the second attack a lot of times. So a lot of times it's just RNG as to whether he happens to fling it at you in exactly the right spot, and then maybe you can roll away again. The issue, so one of the two things needs to happen. Either when he does the attack, they all go in the same direction, so that if you're quick enough to dodge roll out of the way, you don't get screwed over because you're not able to dodge roll fast enough. Or if you're going to make it so he can do it 3 times in 3 different directions, that's fine too, but they need to be spaced out enough so that we're physically capable of dodge rolling out of the way before he slams the next one, so that we can be ready, so that we have the ability to dodge roll all of that stuff. Right now, he slams faster than we're physically capable of dodge rolling, and more than once I've died because I dodge roll once and then he immediately slams on where I am now, and I don't even get a chance to try to dodge roll again because he's already hit me before I've recovered from the dodge roll that I've done. So this fight is really irritating. Of the bosses that needs to be fixed, this probably is up there towards the top. And then lastly, Viper Napuatsi. This one just has way too much stuff going on in a small space. The problem with this fight is that it starts out fine, you know, you're bashing on this thing, but as the fight progresses, she starts doing these AoE attacks, which by themselves isn't bad, but then you have these environmental effects that are just kind of flinging across from different directions from the guards that she has. And then she has multiple different AoE attacks going on at the same time. They're merging on top of each other. So in the end, you get to this part where there's pretty much nowhere that's safe to stand, and then the damage piles up so quickly that you're just gonna die. So if you can't just burn her down quickly before it gets to that point, you end up getting really screwed over because there's just it all just builds up too much to where you can't do anything, and it's really frustrating. So they either need to open up the amount of space that we have to fight in that one to give us a little bit more breathing room, or they need to make it so that there's only one AoE effect happening at a time, so that you have the ability to find a safe spot and wait for that to go away before trying to fight her again, because it's way too much going on in a small space. So that's all of the notes that I have from going through the campaign. I'm sure that I have other things that I've thought about throughout the entire thing that I just didn't remember as I was trying to make this list. I literally just finished the campaign right before I started recording this video. And you know, I haven't even started maps yet. We're gonna be starting maps here pretty soon. But I just wanted to take a moment to cover some of the things that have been super frustrating for me. And you know, I paid my $30 for the game. I get to say what I want to say. I get to provide my feedback on things I think should be better that would make the game more enjoyable. So that's what I'm doing right now. So hopefully you got something out of this video. It's a much longer video than I typically would do for something like this, but I just really wanted to make sure I did a point by point on all of the things that I have found extremely irritating over the course of playing several characters through at least through Act 3 on this game. And you know, I lean towards the casual side, so for casual gamers, that's what these are for. For the hardcore people, they're willing to just fight through everything because that's just the way that they do it. Me, I want to enjoy the game, and these changes would push the game towards being more enjoyable and less of a frustrating grind fest. So that's all I have to say about that. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Hit the like button, subscribe to help us reach 10,000 subscribers. Join as a member for early access to videos, among other perks, or you can just leave YouTube's version of a tip with that thanks button. Also have PayPal and Patreon links in the description if you'd like to go that route. So again, thanks for watching. Be sure to come back when we start doing maps, and I'll see you then.